At the touch of a remote start switch, a boat can spring to life with music, air conditioning, hot food, lighting, and all the other luxurious comforts aboard. A generator set makes this possible, but it is one of the least thought about necessities in a boat. It's just expected to work. But sometimes that's not the case, and the problem may stem from improper installation procedures. Installing a generator set in a boat is not always easy, and when things go wrong, the solution can be puzzling. By guiding you through the installation process, we'll point out the critical practices that must be followed and also provide some tips and alternatives that will help you get the job done right. By the way, these aren't practices that pertain only to Onan gensets. They pertain to all gensets. And following our instructions will save you time and money, plus help provide a top-notch installation that will make your customers happy. This tape is not meant to replace your genset installation instruction manual, nor will it qualify you to approve installations. It is meant as a supplement and a guide. Therefore, during the tape, we'll occasionally refer you to the manufacturer's instructions for more specific and complete information. Always use qualified personnel and follow the manufacturer's safety precautions. The remarks contained in this tape are for your consideration. Your conformance does not imply Onan's approval of the installation. While Onan takes great pride in its products, it does not design or approve applications for those products. You'll also notice emphasis on specific procedures for gasoline gensets, for the obvious reason that gasoline is potentially more dangerous than diesel fuel. Make sure employees do not smoke or use any equipment that could cause a spark and ignite fuel, resulting in fire or explosion. Always follow United States Coast Guard regulations. Although these regulations apply only in the United States, their purpose and intent are valid worldwide. Check local standards and practices in countries outside the U.S. We recommend you follow American Boat and Yacht Council, ABYC standards also. 5 basic areas of the installation will be covered in this tape. They are pre-installation, cooling system, fuel system, exhaust system, and electrical system. This is a tremendous amount of information, so please feel free to stop at any point for review. There's also a built-in break. You are in complete control of the installation process, and that's why it's so important that you take the time to listen carefully and understand what we're explaining. Use this tape to help prevent a problem. You're the only ones who can get it right. Before you put any equipment in place, evaluate the generator and the installation location carefully. Here are the basics. Properly installed and operated, all Onan gasoline-fueled marine generator sets are designed to be externally ignition protected. Never choose a gasoline generator set that is not ignition protected for marine installations. If there's more than one fuel type aboard, consult U.S. Coast Guard regulations about proper and safe procedures. The safest practice is to have only one fuel aboard and have all equipment meet applicable codes. The generator set must be supported under its vibration isolators on stringers or frames. Specially built platforms must be strong enough to support the weight of the genset plus absorb shock loads, which can reach 6 to 8 Gs. All mounting surfaces must be flat and level. Secure the platform and/or the generator to the boat structure with clamps, bolts, or screws. A poor support system can cause damage to the genset, and unwanted vibration and noise can be transmitted throughout the boat. These problems may be expensive or impossible to fix later. Choose a location where the generator is least likely to have salt water splashing on it through a hatch or from the bilge during acceleration and extreme pitch and roll conditions. Choose an installation location that provides enough space on all sides for proper ventilation and service work. Often this will be in the same compartment with the propulsion engines. The generator manufacturer will provide some basic compartment size requirements, but that has more to do with operational requirements than servicing requirements. Keep in mind, somebody's got to change the oil, filter, reach a spark plug, check the impeller. In addition, the operator must make periodic visual and audible checks on the fuel and exhaust systems. For safety's sake, make sure the installation space allows for that. Make sure your seawater lift is no more than 3 feet, because flexible impeller pumps cannot reliably lift higher than this. A generator set requires airflow for 3 reasons. 1, to remove flammable or other harmful gases. 2, to provide engine combustion air and generator cooling air. And 3, to control compartment temperature. The amount of combustion air and generator cooling air required is different for every model. Each has specific needs that the manufacturer determines. If there isn't sufficient airflow, compartment temperatures will also rise substantially. The result is usually poor fuel economy, reduced power output, unstable operation, run-on, vapor lock, increased engine deposit buildups, and possible damage to electronic controls. All these things can drive up maintenance costs and make customers unhappy. Gasoline begins to vaporize extensively at 90 to 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Maintaining a compartment temperature of less than 125 degrees will help avoid overheating and vapor lock. In addition, engines and generators put out more horsepower and electricity in a cooler environment. Here are some suggestions to increase airflow. Relocate the generator. Modify the boat layout. Add more vents and ductwork, or install another power blower. There are inherent differences between raw water and heat exchanger cooling systems, but there are no differences in the installation criteria. Each engine and generator set must have its own cooling system, including through-hull fittings, seacock, strainers, and hoses. A hull strainer should be installed to prevent debris from entering the cooling system. Install the strainer with the slots parallel to the keel. Depending upon how a scoop-type fitting is mounted, pressure or vacuum is created in the system. Pressure will flood the engine, and vacuum will starve the set of cooling water. Use only flush-type through-hull fittings to avoid these problems. We strongly recommend a second, finer water strainer be installed just after the seacock to protect the seawater cooling system. This strainer is absolutely essential if you don't use a hull strainer. In very dirty water, this filter provides extra protection against engine damage from silt and sand. The seacock should be installed on the inside of the through-hull fitting for service and emergency shutoff. Use flexible reinforced hose that meets SAE standard 20R4 or better. Use screw-type clamps, preferably stainless, at each connection. Leave at least 1 foot of unsecured flexible hose at the genset end to absorb set movement and vibration. Secure the rest of the hose to avoid chafing or damage. If the seawater injection port on the exhaust manifold is at or below the waterline, an anti-siphon valve must be installed in the seawater cooling system. The valve bleeds air into the exhaust water discharge line when the generator is not running and prevents seawater from siphoning into the engine and ruining the engine or even flooding the generator compartment. The valve is placed in the line just before the exhaust manifold water injection port. In order for the valve to function properly, specific mounting criteria must be met. Follow the valve manufacturer's instructions carefully. On heat exchanger systems, install the coolant recovery tank anywhere it is convenient. It's best to have the tank at the same level as the coolant fill cap. Always use a 50-50 mixture of ethylene glycol and distilled water to help prevent corrosion. Each generator must have its own draw from the fuel tank and its own fuel line. This prevents fuel starvation because the generator's fuel pump cannot overcome the draw of most propulsion engine fuel pumps. For the same reason, we also do not recommend T's in the line. Keep elbows and fittings to a minimum to reduce fuel restriction, which contributes to vapor lock. All fuel line materials must meet U.S. Coast Guard and ABYC standards. Federal law requires all flex fuel hose be U.S. Coast Guard Type A if used in gasoline environments. If it's not stamped USCG Type A, it's not the right hose. Type B hose with a fire sleeve also is acceptable, but we don't recommend it. If you're using solid fuel lines, use at least 1 foot of flex hose at the generator set connection to absorb vibration. ABYC standards define the proper fuel line and hose materials and require a crossover ground wire between the generator set and propulsion engines. This crossover wire prevents starting current from passing through the fuel system and smaller electrical conductors if the battery negative fails. Make sure all lines, solid or flexible, are adequately supported with clips or straps every 18 inches. If a metallic fuel line is used, it must be bonded to the boat common bonding conductor. Whenever possible, route the fuel lines low in the compartment where it's cooler to help reduce the chances of vapor lock. As always, observe the pertinent Coast Guard regulations and follow the generator manufacturer's instructions to avoid chafing or cutting the fuel line. Install a fuel shutoff valve, either electrical or manual, for service at the fuel tank connection, and another at the generator connection. These valves must meet U.S. Coast Guard and ABYC regulations. If you use a manual shutoff valve, you must be able to operate it outside the tank's compartment. In gasoline fuel systems, fuel siphoning creates potential fire and explosion hazards. A carburetor float valve cannot be trusted to stop fuel from siphoning. Also, a damaged fuel line or loose fitting can cause fuel to siphon into the boat. So if any portion of the fuel line runs lower than the top of the fuel tank, an anti-siphon valve or electrically operated fuel stop valve must be installed. The best place to install the valve is right at the fuel tank. Finally, follow the genset manufacturer's recommendation for fuel system test before operation. Let's take a short break now. Please feel free to review anything we've already covered before continuing. Now you're ready to tackle the exhaust system. Each generator set must have a completely separate exhaust system from start to finish to prevent exhaust from being pushed back through an engine that isn't operating, causing carbon monoxide to enter the boat. Carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless, and deadly gas. Inhalation can result in severe personal injury or death. Always use wet exhaust hose certified for marine exhaust use. That information is usually stamped in bold letters right on the hose. Occasionally, an engine, generator, or boat manufacturer will provide specially manufactured molded hose pieces for their equipment. These are fine as long as you get them directly from the manufacturer. Non-marine hose is unacceptable and dangerous. The muffler fittings and exhaust hose have to be the same size as the generator exhaust fitting. If your exhaust system is longer than 20 feet, you may need to increase the hose size to reduce back pressure. Check the installation manual or with a generator manufacturer for specific instructions. Excessive back pressure restricts engine output and reduces engine life. Use 2 screw-type clamps on every exhaust connection. The band and the screw must be stainless steel. The clamps should be 1 clamp width apart. Make sure bends in the hose don't exceed the hose manufacturer's radius requirements. Or use an exhaust elbow. These elbows are particularly useful if you need to route exhaust hose out of housings or around tight corners. You can usually get these elbows from the generator manufacturer. If you use solid exhaust tubing, leave at least a foot of flexible exhaust hose at the engine to absorb vibration. Always use a lift muffler because this type provides resistance to water backflowing into the engine. In addition, the muffler inlet must always be a foot or more below the exhaust water injection manifold to prevent water from backflowing into the engine, even under extreme pitch and roll conditions. The hose must always drain toward the muffler at a minimum grade of 1/2 inch per linear foot. Leave at least 1 foot of hose between the generator and the muffler for vibration isolation. Secure the muffler to a level surface. The hose exiting the muffler must be nearly vertical all the way to its highest point. Here the hose turns over to channel water away from the muffler. This turnover must be no more than 48 inches above the muffler base and a minimum of 1 foot above the through hull fitting. It is critical that the hose section from the turnover to the through hull fitting be sloped at least 1/2 inch per foot. There can be no level sections or rises anywhere in this portion of the exhaust system. Secure all hose to prevent chafing and sagging. Start the generator set and observe the entire system for visual and audible exhaust leaks. If any are observed, stop the set and repair the leaks immediately. We recognize that installation conditions can be difficult. But keep in mind that if you don't follow these recommendations, the genset can be damaged. In addition, life and property hazards increase rapidly. Following these steps tells your customers your work is nothing but the best. Use only qualified marine electricians for your electrical work. Electrical shock will cause severe injury or death. Size the AC load wires according to the genset output rating and in accordance with ABYC standards. The genset nameplate will show the output rating. Read and follow the wiring diagram provided by the generator manufacturer. Make sure your AC connections are snug. Use a strain relief on all cables at the connection box to prevent the wires from accidentally being damaged or broken. Secure all wires with clamps every 18 inches and leave at least a foot of unsecured cable or flexible metal conduit at the control box knockout to absorb vibration. Never connect the generator set and commercial power, or a serious electrical explosion will occur. Therefore, use only a break-before-make transfer switch or other mechanically interlocked switch between the generator and the boat's electrical loads per ABYC. Follow ABYC standards for grounding and bonding the AC circuit. Each genset model has specific starting requirements, so size the cables per the generator manufacturer's instructions. Make sure the B+, B-, and engine crossover connections are made properly and in the correct location on the genset to prevent serious generator damage or malfunction. This information is found on the genset or in the manuals. Leave at least 1 foot of unsecured cable at the genset to absorb vibration and clamp the remaining cable every 18 inches to avoid chafing and damage. Each genset should have its own starting battery. Size the battery per the generator manufacturer's instructions. Don't use a battery with less current rating than specified, or you'll experience poor starting and may potentially damage the starter and starting circuit. Install the battery as close to the generator set as possible. Connect the battery positive first. Make sure connections are clean and snug. Then cover the terminals with dielectric grease to retard corrosion. Remote control connections are easily made using the socket on the side of the DC control box. The genset manufacturer supplies wiring harnesses and remote controls. If you use a custom remote control, refer to the genset wiring diagrams found in the installation manual prior to connection. The generator set must be bonded to the boat's common bonding conductor. The proper connection location is found on the genset or in the installation manuals. We hope this tape has reduced some of the difficulty surrounding many installations. We can't emphasize enough the importance of showing this tape to everyone who works on a generator installation, and especially to new employees. Use it also as a periodic refresher for employees to make sure they are following the practices your company has established for generator installations.